Hey, welcome everyone to this radio video, and this is the solar and propagation report number 7, and we are July 24th, 2014. So, what's happening on the sun in the past week? First of all, I was making this video last week. On the 17th, we actually had, for the first time of 2014, a sunspot number of 0, which means that the sun was completely blank of sunspots. And so it's the first day of 0 sunspots for 2014 and the first in 3 years. So having a 0 day for the first time in 3 years, I think it's slowly showing us that we've passed the peak of cycle 24, which wasn't very strong. Actually, it was a double peaked solar cycle. But don't worry, we're not down to the lowest yet. We still have a year or two of higher solar activity before it really rolls out to another solar minimum. So 3 years is the time that we had a 0 sunspot, which is a little long time now. But you know what? Thanks to geomagnetic field that was quiet, there wasn't really any geomagnetic storms or anything. So we enjoyed pretty interesting propagation. Actually, every day that I watched, propagation was actually pretty good, even on high frequencies. Solar flux did dip in the 80s, upper 80s, 87, 86, 87, 88, for a day or two. But it rebounded fast and came back up, and it's close to 100. Actually, if we look at this morning on propagation, we are at 99. And the sun has a bigger sunspot, 2121 here on the sun, which is kind of a big spot. So I expect it to actually go above 100 in the coming week. And the coming week will also bring us maybe even more solar activity, because the old sunspots that were on the surface of the sun like 2 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago, will slowly come back if they survived. And actually, even though we didn't have any solar activity on the Earth side of the sun, we did see a few coronal mass ejections on the far side of the sun, which means that the far side of the sun is, has at least a few spots that seem to be quite active. And these actually will probably come into view in the coming weeks. So expect solar flux to rise above 100 in the week ahead, which will be good for propagation. K index 2 this morning didn't really go, in the past week I haven't seen it go above 2, which keeps good propagation even through the poles, the auroral propagation, for example. Also DXing on higher frequencies with Asia and far away places was quite good. So if you have a low noise location, propagation is actually quite good. Look at the videos. I did a few videos last night around 0100, 0100 hours, and a few videos that I posted also of Radio Australia, and I had a great signal of Radio New Zealand at 0400 UTC. It was really good propagation last night. I heard Australia on 17795. That frequency doesn't come in that well here into Montreal usually. It was really good last night. So it does show us that a solar flux around 100 is good enough for pretty good propagation. An interesting article that you might want to check for, and if you go to spaceweather.com, shows you that even a weak solar cycle can produce major events. If you are interested in learning a little more, Go to spaceweather.com and click on the full story of the solar superstorm of 2012. Very interesting article showing us that we did have a near miss of a very, very powerful coronal mass ejection that happened in July of 2012. And that if Earth would have been in the path of that particle of cloud from the sun, or cloud particle, sorry, from the sun, we would probably be in an awful mess because a lot of the power stations, the power grid would have been really, really hit hard, and today's technology would have been, reduced to zero. And it's an extremely, extremely nice event. The event did bring. You can see here the view on the right side of my screen, or of your screen. You can see the view of that coronal mass ejection that missed Earth, actually. But one of the satellites that we use to check for solar activity, which are stereo spacecraft, was actually hit by that cloud. And if anybody knows a little bit about solar activity, I love astronomy and I love following these. This was pretty strong and close to the Carrington event. For people that don't know what the Carrington event is, the Carrington event is a solar flare that happened on the sun in 1859, and about 36 hours later, there were massive auroral display. There were aurora borealis visible even into Cuba. Gives you an idea of how big the event was. And actually, at that time, the only technology we really had was the telegraph. And a lot of people were saying that the telegraph operators actually were getting electrocuted while they were touching the equipment. And even a few stations caught fire because of the sparks that were coming out of the equipment due to the induced electrical currents when we have geomagnetic storms. So it was a major geomagnetic storm back then, but because of the technology that was really, really almost non-existent, it didn't have much of an effect, except that there were good stories. There are stories of people in the West, for example, the miners in the western United States that actually woke up in the middle of the night thinking it was morning because it was so bright outside. And it was because of the aurora borealis that was so strong, they actually made it look like daytime was coming. And apparently people in England and even in North America could read a newspaper under the aurora borealis light. So it gives you an idea of how strong they were. And a great article that tells you that the July 2012 event that missed Earth by only a week. I mean, if it had happened, I think it's a week earlier, Earth would have been in the line of fire, and consequences could have been quite bad. So it tells you that that event was as strong, probably as strong as the Carrington event. And here in Quebec, we have a little story of solar activity back in 1989, and I remember because back then I was working at one of my first jobs I've ever had, and I remember when I woke up in the morning there was no electricity, and we were in March of '89. And back then we had no electricity for about 8 to 10 hours, depending on where you were. The power grid collapsed because of a very strong solar flare that hit Earth in March of '89, and because Quebec's power grid goes so far in the north, because our power stations are close to James Bay, which is very, very close to Hudson's Bay, which is very far from the south of the province, and it's quite north, so they are easily affected by geomagnetic storms. So that was about half the power of the event that happened in July 2012. So if it would have hit Earth, we would have had an event that is like 2 times as powerful as that, and close to the Carrington event, which would have been interesting. So read it if you are interested in that. The solar superstorm of July 2012. Great, 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 and interesting article if you want to learn more on what's happening with the sun and the environment around Earth. Apart from that, nothing much is happening. Sun is quiet, but there are a few spots. We will reach more than 100 solar flux in the coming week, that's for sure. And nothing for now is actually showing us that we will have any, coronal mass ejections, but things can change very rapidly on the sun. So always, always think of the sun as this big, unstable ball of gas, and that anytime something can happen. You never know. So check those high frequencies. Australia been coming in 17795, very high this morning. I listened to KBS World Radio, full 1 hour English at 1300 UTC on 15575 with great signal, about S9 on my radio, which is quite good. Still coming in now in Korean at 1455 as I'm making this video, and with S7, S8. So good propagation towards Asia on higher frequencies. Radio New Zealand 15720, great station to listen to if you're in North America. And lots of stations to listen to in a higher frequencies, 16 meter band, 19 meter band. So the only negative I would say is the daytime. In summer, daytime is horrible, and between 11 a.m. local time to about 2 p.m. local time. If you don't hear much, it's probably normal. But even then, with when I go out to do some little de-expeditions with my portable receivers in lower noise environments, there seems to be always something to listen to with pretty interesting signals. So I hope you enjoy this propagation report number 7, and that you will do some DXing this weekend and next week. Propagation conditions are good. Keep track of these information every day. dx.qsl.net is the place to go to get the latest. Every 3 hours these numbers change, so you get the latest. The next one will be at 1500 UTC. Check spaceweather.com for the latest news and all of what's happening. When something's happening on the sun, there's an immediate, in the coming minutes after the event, there are articles showing up. And solarham.net, another great site to know what's happening on the sun and learning more about propagation, solar activity, and all that interaction with Earth. So hope you enjoy these reports, and 73s, see you next week for another report. This was the solar activity propagation report number 7 for July 24th, 2014. Thank you for watching, and 73.